Good morning, Torbay. Welcome, welcome. This is an exciting show today. We've got our usual lineup of guests and entertainment for you, but today we're broadcasting live from EPIC, Torbay's flagship electronics, photonics and innovation centre, kindly built and provided for us through the help of the TDA. I think we're talking about a £10 million investment, and now we're starting to fill it up with people doing stuff and making business happen in Torbay as we get back to business. And it is quite exciting having a suit and tie on. Even Uncle Jim's got his tie on. Look, he's got the rocking horse in the background, but we know that Jim is helping us around. So who are we? What are we? This is Torbay Business Forum's 11th Breakfast Bites. We used to meet monthly for a breakfast. We'd be shaking hands, hugging and kissing and all of that kind of stuff that we humans used to do. And now we've got our face masks and we've got our hand gel and we're afraid to breathe on anything. But the best thing about getting back to work, we've got confidence to come and do some good. Bringing businesses together is what Torbay Business Forum does, and we will concentrate on business, infrastructure and skills. All our content, all our subjects, that's what we do. Now, we're here today. Wayne Loshi, is here as the Centre Director of EPIC. We've got Jim in the newsroom from Torbay Weekly, and of course Emily, our moderator, who actually pulls all this together for us from South Devon College. Now, a little bit about me. Today is quite special. A Tuesday morning, the 11th of September 1979, I walked into Barclays Bank in Princes Street in Plymouth, and I'm still here. 41 years this week of working for the firm. Now, I followed my dad, who did 41 years. My son's been in it for 14 years. My wife did 22 years. My brother did 36 years. We'll be talking to the police later, and I think they'll be handing out smaller sentences. But celebrating working for the firm and giving me opportunities to do things like this, which is fantastic. So, and I would like to thank our sponsors this month. Happens to be Barclays as one of them, and the other one is Big Wave Marketing. So Ronnie Holden, I hope you've tuned in. We really do appreciate all of this help and support that our sponsors give us, because without our sponsors we could not bring these events to you. So without further ado, I'd like to go over to the newsroom. Jim, tell us what is news in Torbay at the moment.
Good morning, Mr. Reynolds. Congratulations on your work anniversary. You don't look a day over 75, by the way. Brilliant. So the theme for this week's weekly is the show must go on, which is relevant to Torbay and the rest of the country. So we've talked to Steve Laister, well-known entertainer at the Babacon Theatre, who's been off the stage since lockdown in March, but he's vowing to battle back. And we've touched base with a really inspirational lady in Paynton, who's run a dance school for 50 years. She's got links with Morecambe Wise and Bruce Forsyth. So really inspirational story with her. Business-wise, we've done a piece about the forum's new links with the Chambers of Commerce in Torbay to give it a stronger voice, which is brilliant for the future. We've got a breakdown of how Torbay's benefited from the Eat Out to Help Out figures, which has given our tourism sector a real much needed boost. Paynton Zoo seems to be weathering the storm since lockdown, with lots and lots of people visiting there, which is really good, and we need to encourage locals to maintain that. And we've got the Palace Avenue Theatre that's been named in the Top Biz 100 Awards. So it's really vibrant, inspiring business stories in this week's paper. And we got our regular columnists like the inspirational Katie Cabana, our retired Dr. Peter Moore, and our own MP Kevin Foster. Southern College and their young columnists have their Teen Talk column. We've got our mystery ghost writer, and we've got our first ever cat chat woman, believe it or not. So it's a real variety show this week's weekly to follow our theme. So there you are, Steve. Hopefully get that out on Thursday.
Excellent. And admire you that 6 months ago you launched a free-to-all newspaper in just before the pandemic hit. Could you have foreseen that one, Jim?
Well, we announced the launch at the Abbey Sands Hotel in the just 4 days later, the hotel was locked down like the rest of the country. So we went from having lots of commercial support from lots and lots of people to launching with £600 in the kitty. So we had a choice of either having a go or ditching or postponing, and we had the backing of Archant. So we had a go, and we worked in partnership with the local authority, which was brilliant. And we've grown, and we just need to make sure we keep doing that. And we've grown because of the support from the people in Torbay, which has been brilliant, and the feedback has been really good as well. So yeah, it was a bit of a challenge going from a few grand in the bank to 600 quid, Steve. So if you could help us going forward with your Barclays hat on and give us a 25-year repay loan period, that'd be really good. Over to you.
Well, I'm sure we could rustle up something, Jim. But as they say, how do you get a small fortune? You start off with a big one and then work your way down. And of course, Jim, you also are chair of Torbay Together. And briefly, what's happening with Torbay Together at the moment?
Yes, so we've decided that obviously Torbay needs lots of help to get through the challenges that we face at the moment. But we sought the advice of our MP, who is a minister and has bags of influence in Westminster. So why wouldn't you be guided by Kevin Foster? So we've actually met Kevin to seek his advice on how we can lobby in the most effective way to get that help that we need. But don't go in a just asking way, go in a way that we can be positive and say what we can do. So we've been asked to give a view of where Torbay might be in 10 years' time and how the government might better help with us. And that hopefully will lead with a little delegation from the Together Partnership, actually meeting a minister face-to-face in quotes in these days to see how we can achieve that. So it's not a case of firing off letters here, there and everywhere. It's a united, lobbying, strong voice fighting Torbay's corner. So we're at that stage really, which is really exciting from the Bay, Steve.
Yeah, well, that's fantastic. And remember a couple of years ago, you went off to London and you took the Russian doll Matilda. So maybe I guess that might be rolled out again at some stage. So fantastic.
Yeah, we're looking at something a little bit. Maybe we'll take you up dressed as a leprechaun and see if we can achieve anything with some doors opening there. About that, you never know, do you?
Well, funny you should say that, because you and I both are going to get our comeuppance on the 30th of September, aren't we? Where we're both being locked up and kept under house arrest for our crimes. I can't remember what your crime was, Jim.
Mine was stealing the Bay's crown jewels and give them back to the poor, which of course Barclays do every day of the week.
Yes, I do my best. Well, because mine, for some reason, they said something to do with impersonating an elf and hogging the microphone. But well, we will be appearing in our jail or bail situation with a group of other local business people and personalities, should we say, all in aid of Rowcroft. So please, people, do look us up. Please do donate. And I know Barclays is kindly going to double mine up. So whatever I raise, Barclays are going to do pound for pound on my mine at least. So I do need to raise a couple of grand there, please. So let's help Rowcroft for the work they do. So thanks, Jim, and thank you for all the work you're doing. If somebody wants one of your papers, how do they get one?
Again, they are delivered to 15,000 selected homes through letterboxes, but there's another 8,000 that are in outlets within a 10-minute walk of your home if you don't have one delivered directly. So have a look in the paper, have a look online. There's a list of about 50 corner shops, garages where you can pick one up if you don't have one delivered. And if you've got any issues, email me and I'll sort one out for you.
Thank you, Jim. That's excellent. Now, so I'm going to take a bit of a risk here, but today it's a bit exciting because we're in a really swanky office block and I've got Wayne Losky. Sorry, I do apologize, Wayne. Is that the correct way to pronounce your name?
No, it's Losky, Steve.
Losky. So I knew I was going to get that wrong and I should have asked you at the beginning, but apologies. So Wayne Losky, Centre Director of Epic. How's it going? Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, first of all, thanks, Steve, for coming to Epic. It's great to host you here today. So going really well, actually. So those who don't know, Epic's a modern innovation centre for electronics businesses. We're located here at White Rock in Paignton. Been open for less than a year, but 15 units have already been let. So we've got 9 businesses already located within the centre. So one of the most encouraging things from my perspective is the names and the calibre of businesses that have chosen to take up space within Epic. So businesses such as Bay Photonics, Effect Photonics, Price Scientific, they're all located here within the building. So we've got startup businesses, growth businesses, so it's a real variety. We have companies that deal in hardware, software, all located within the building as well. So what does Epic offer? So it's offers modern labs and offices. We have a classified clean room, which I believe is the only one of its kind this side of Bristol available on the open market. So businesses locally can come in and have access directly to a clean room. We have over £1.5 million worth of shared electronics equipment located in the building, which again businesses can come and use, and all the standard things that you'd expect a modern business centre to have. So parking, our own 1 gigabit direct to premise internet connection, 24/7 access to the building. Well, as you know, Steve, boardrooms and things like that. So, so small businesses can come into Epic and really overnight behave and represent themselves as a large organisation with all these facilities. So if any people looking at this today, or their clients or their supply chain or anyone within your network operates within an electronics or technology sector in general, please come and have a look at Epic and come and see what facilities we have.
Yeah, and you welcome visitors?
Absolutely, yes.
Yes, well, thank you for today.
Great.
So, and I mean, these are fantastic facilities, and it's great looking out over the South Hams here as well, towards the colleges, new sports fields. It's really good. I particularly like the Epic cups with a little spoon, and that's rather swizzy. I think I might sort of disappear. So souvenir hunting here, but Epic Centre. Now, Nick Williams asked me to mention that the Epic sessions are running, and these are covering a range of digital skills. They're free to anybody in Devon and Somerset, and the link is at tinyurl.com. Please do look it up. If you can't find it, send us a message and we'll make sure that you know where to look. The money for that runs out at the end of the year, so get it now. Anybody wants to brush up on their digital skills, you can do it here. So thank you, Wayne. Wayne Losky, thank you very much for that. We look forward to seeing you again at some stage. But I'm going to turn now to one of the new tenants for Epic. And I'm going to bring on Dr. Andrew Robertson, who is the Research and Innovation Manager. And hopefully we will find him. There he is. Great to see you. I think you're a couple of floors down from me. Is that right, Andrew?
I'm one below you.
One below me, right? Okay. I'll knock on the ceiling. Now, Andrew not only is Research and Innovation Manager for Bay Photonics, also the chair of Torbay High Tech Cluster. And we talk about heritage, and I know that Torbay has quite a history of photonics. You think the place where I'm sat now, we would be looking at STC in the old days, which became Nortel, which became Bookham. There's a lot of people that have come to this area, and basically it was part of their history. So, Andrew, you're going to talk us through, where did it all start for you?
Okay, thanks, Steve. Yeah, well, I will tell you where it started. I hope everyone has finished their breakfast and strapped themselves in, because we're going to talk about electromagnetic wave theory and quantum physics a little bit as well, just to keep you excited, as well as taking a bit of a step back through time and bringing us to the present as well. We go on to the next slide. a brief history of me. I came here in 2000 to a large global company, JDS Uniphase, as a senior optical engineer. That's in Broomhill Way, Torquay. Unfortunately, the bubble burst in telecoms soon after, and I was one of the co-founders of SciFarm Fibre Optics, which was located in that building in Broomhill Way. That was 2002. We started with 30 people, and 2007 we sold to Gooch & Housego, which is headquartered in Ilminster, Somerset. And I was with Gooch & Housego between 2007 until earlier this year in 2020, and I had various positions there, business development, engineering, and then more towards the end, mergers and acquisitions. So I had a little bit less to do with local business, which is still doing very well. And then in June of this year, I started my new position at Bay Photonics. The pictures there show the early team at SciFarm when we launched, nice and close together. And then the bottom picture is the Bay Photonics team, nice and socially distanced for the current conditions. And the buildings you can see there, the SciFarm building, which is now G&H, still in Broomhill Way, is the old Sutton Seeds building. And I'm now in the wonderful new Epic building that Wayne's described. If you go on to the next slide. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the heritage, a little bit about the high-tech cluster and some of its members. The Epic building's been nicely covered, and then I'll just go on to some of the quantum technology that we're doing here at Bay. Next slide. Yeah. Okay. So what brought me here? Well, the heritage, as it's been touched on in Torbay, is very strong, and this is a rather busy slide, and I'll just pick out the highlights. But it still happens that one of the residents of Torquay, a gentleman called Oliver Heaviside, who was here towards the end of the 1800s and in the early part of the 1900s, was a great British mathematician, engineer, and physicist. And actually, he lived here in Palace Avenue in Paignton, but he also lived in Torquay and Newton Abbot, and he has 3 blue plaques in the area dedicated to him. And actually, probably you all know about him because there was a newspaper that's been mentioned recently, back in July, end of July, had an article about him. That is like the Great Torbay Weekly. But he did many things, but they were all very important for communications and where we are today in terms of what we can do with communication. So he discovered and has a layer of the atmosphere named after him, the Heaviside layer, which lovers of the Cats musical might have heard mentioned, as it's actually in one of the songs in the Cats musical. But he identified that you could bounce radio waves off the atmosphere and be able to communicate around the other side of the world by doing this. He also developed the calculus and the Maxwell's, what we know as Maxwell's equations, which describe electromagnetic wave theory. Those are the equations beside his name in the timeline. But what these equations did, I mean, they look rather complicated perhaps, but they took James Clerk Maxwell's 22 equations and basically boiled them down to 4 key equations that now are called the Maxwell's equations, that we learn today as how electromagnetic waves in the air or through wires, how they move. And what he said, one of his famous quotes, is that he said the best result of mathematics is to be able to do without it, because he simplified it all. And I think probably all can agree with that. Now he died in 1925 and is buried in Paignton. And the next key thing in the timeline is in the 1950s when STC came here. Now, although I can't prove it, I have no doubt that the people who worked in STC knew that Oliver Heaviside was from Paignton. He died only 25, 30 years earlier, and they used his equations and his theory all the time. So although, as I say, I can't prove it, I wouldn't be surprised if one of the reasons they came to Paignton was because of Oliver Heaviside. Anyway, they came here in the 1950s, and that company was pretty famous because they pretty much discovered that you could send light down a fibre and communicate through optical fibres. Sir Charles Kale in 1977 discovered that. And then STC split into a number of companies that became famous Torbay companies, AVX, who were bought by Kyocera, and then most famously Nortel. In 1991, Nortel acquired the telecommunications part of STC, and Nortel Networks grew here to employ 5,000 people. And I've been traveling the world in the last 20 years, and many people know the name of Paignton through Nortel Networks and the work that was done there. And then Nortel Networks is no more. However, there are a number of companies who've actually come from Nortel Networks. 26 is one of them, and Lumentum is another one. Effect Photonics located here because of the knowledge and know-how that came from Nortel. And then we have another number of companies, Queensgate, Palomar, and I'll touch on some of them later. Next slide, please. So the high-tech cluster, what do? Well, we're headquartered here in EPIC, and we are an organisation promoting and advocating Torbay companies with its regional expertise, and we encourage opportunities for collaboration, innovation and investment. Anthony Magnell visited us about a month ago, and there he is beside the nice high-tech cluster plaque, which you'll be glad to know is on each floor of the EPIC Centre. There's a plaque to that. Why is photonics important? The numbers, for those of us who like the numbers. Well, it's a key thing here. There's the numbers. I won't touch too much of the numbers. However, the key one is the gross value add per employee, which is £76,000, which is way above the average of £67,000 for average workers in industries throughout the UK. Next, please. So what's photonics? Just to let you know what that is. It's the science and technology related to the generation, transmission, detection, and the use of light and its unique properties. And light is made up of small particles called photons, in the same way as electronics depends on electrons. That's all very easy for me to say. I've got a PhD in laser physics, but what are the applications of photonics? And I've taken probably the two most important, which touch our lives today. One is telecommunications. The internet, streaming, the cloud are all enabled by photonics. You cannot do anything that we are doing this morning on the internet without photonics. All the information I'm speaking into the computer, and the information then goes to a cell, and in that cell it'll go into an optical fibre and travel around and then get out to all you guys watching. So that can only happen because of photonics. The other key industry and applications, manufacturing. Almost everything that is manufactured today is touched by lasers. The laser is now the machine tool that manufactures everything from cars to microelectronics, and the majority of mobile phones or the laptops, the parts are processed by lasers. There's probably the thing that you're looking at to watch this has had 25 to 30 laser processes used to make the actual device. So it's absolutely key. Long gone are the days of the drill and the lathe in manufacturing. It's all lasers. And the great thing about the laser is the machine tool does not touch. the actual part that it's making. So a drill bit will eventually wear out. A laser will go on 24/7 and doesn't need to be replaced. That has happened only in the last 20 years. That has changed the economics of the globally. Next slide, please. So our membership here, we're a growing, vibrant cluster of world-leading companies. I mean, we are known throughout the world to our customers and to those in the know. We're often described as a kind of silent business or industry here in Torbay, but we are working 24 hours a day. We are working 12 months a year. It doesn't matter if the rain is falling or if it's dark. We're always working here, and also throughout the whole COVID problem, most of our companies have been at work. Bay Photonics has been here in the Epic Centre pretty much working full time because we've been able to socially distance in here. But most of the companies have been working to, if not full capacity, 90% capacity, and relatively few have needed to take many of the government handouts to keep us going. So there's a number of the companies: Queensgate, Spirent, Alert, Plessy, G&H, Artemis Optical 26, Effect, Lumentum, Palomar, and of course we have in our membership South Devon College, because we need South Devon College to provide us with well-educated, well-grounded apprentices and young people to keep us going, because Nortel went a long time ago and some of us are getting a bit older. We need some new blood. So next, please. So I'm going to focus on just a number of the companies. G&H is one I know well because I was there 19 years. There's about 250 employees there today at the Broomhill Way site. Now, it's got a reputation throughout the world for manufacturing the world's best performing and most reliable fiber optic branching components. They are absolutely critical in getting this data that I mentioned flying around the world in and out of long-haul optical transmission cables. If you have used social media today, your data will have passed through a component manufactured in Torquay. I have no doubt of that. The information goes to huge data farms that Google has, Amazon has, Facebook, and these have their own dedicated cables. They will have components made at the Torquay facility of G&H in them. That site probably does about 25 to 30 million pounds worth of business a year now. When we started SciFarm back in 2002, it was about $1 million. So we did pretty well there. Next slide. So Lumentum actually are what was JDS Uniphase, the company I started working for, which was at Broomhill Way, are now called Lumentum. They're a $1.5 billion company. They've got about 100 people in Paignton developing optical transceivers, which are used in these data centers throughout the world. A transceiver is a device, photonic device, that uses fiber optics to transmit and receive data. And again, if you've used social media or the cloud or streaming today, then probably you've used technology that's been developed in Paignton. For those of us that like figures, when I worked for JDS Uniphase back in 2000, their revenue was $1.5 billion back in 2000. So today, Lumentum's is 1.5 billion. And I think that just shows you how high the peak of the telecoms boom was in 2000. And we're only getting back to those numbers in, I guess, in monetary terms, in value. 1.5 billion today is probably a little bit less than 1.5 billion in 2000. But that shows the kind of what's happened in telecommunications. It went up, it went down, it's back up. Next slide, please. So Effect Photonics, they're one of the most exciting new startups in photonics. And what they're doing, they're working in a similar area to Lumentum, the transceiver area, but what they're doing is they're miniaturizing the technology, and they're putting it into what's so-called photonic integrated circuits, and that is a real thumb or finger It's not a giant's finger. That is pretty much what these optical transceivers, which are now, let's say, the size of let's think a matchbox, if anyone remembers matchboxes, but that's about the size that they are today. That's what they need to be if we're going to have communications in all our autonomous vehicles and the kind of Internet of Things. They simply need to be smaller, not just because of space, but because of power requirements as well. There's not enough power in the world to power all these electronics that we're actually going to need for autonomous vehicles. So next slide. So Bay Photonics, we're a little bit smaller. We're 10 people here, but most of the people here are ex-Nortel, or except for me, I'm ex-JDSU. But we're all engineers who went through those turbulent times, the ups and downs, and have worked for companies in between. I myself specialised in medical and space applications at Gooch and Housego. A lot of people here specialised in military with LTech semiconductors that were in the area as well. And most recently, we've been working on quantum projects for various things like quantum key distribution, quantum random number generation, and the rest. So if you go into the next slide. Yeah, here that's the facilities. I won't say much about this because Wayne made a great story. There's some pictures, a few happy employees of Bay in their lab space. Next, please. So what are our projects in quantum technology? Well, quantum technology, for those that are a little bit uncomfortable with it and not familiar, you're in a good company, because Einstein did not like quantum technology. Some of the theories in quantum technology went against his idea, or his postulation that nothing could travel faster than the speed of light. And some of the things that happen in quantum photonics would seem to contradict this. And he called quantum technology spooky action at a distance. And he basically did not believe that some of the things that we now know are true for quantum technology. He didn't believe it. And he postulated and theorized that it could actually not happen, and he was wrong. You know, it's not often I can say that about Einstein, but on this one, he was wrong, and we've now proven in the last 20 years that some of these interactions that happen with quantum particles seem to defy the fact that nothing can travel faster from the speed of light. And we've not quite worked out what's happening there. A lot of work going on in quantum technology at the moment. Now, just because we don't understand it, does that mean we can't use it? Not at all. We all use our iPads and our computers without realizing what processes go on in the processors. And we engineers like to use quantum technology, even though we don't quite understand how it works. One of the key areas is in the quantum computing and what's called quantum cryptology, which is a security from cyber attack application, which is a big thing today, because although quantum computing is in its infancy, as soon as somebody has a quantum computer, nobody's data will be safe anymore. You'll need to have a quantum computer yourself, and you'll need to be able to use quantum cryptology to have your data protected. So we're working with companies and University of Cambridge, Toshiba Research, and we're working with them on packaging of their devices for photonic integrated chips for quantum cryptology. So it's a very, very important area. A lot of people working on it in Europe, in the US, and in China. China are throwing a lot of money into this, you know, and we know that we're very worried about cyber attacks from third parties there. So that's one of the key areas we're working on. Another one is quantum sources for detection, and that's for everything for detecting gas to gravimeters to detect gravity, magnetometers to detect brain waves. So there's an awful lot of interesting stuff going on in the quantum field. Steve promised me if people wanted, I could do a whole talk on quantum technology in a in a later Bytes session, and I'm totally up for it, Steve, no problem. So
yeah,
final
Jim is as well.
final slide. Nick, yeah. So all this info, or much of this information, is on you can find on the High Tech Cluster LinkedIn site or our website, which is hosted by Epic. So thank you. I hope it's not been too much of a roller coaster. I hope it's been informative, but there are great things going on in photonic and electronic technology in the Bay still.
Wow, that's a fantastic roundup, and what a timeline there, Andrew. I was wondering if we were going to go through every year, but yes. But one of the things you started off with was Oliver Heaviside and the blue plaques, and I'm really proud to say that one of those blue plaques in Palace Avenue is actually on the building of Barclays Palace Avenue, because I believe that's where he lived. So
yes,
it's amazing what can happen. Yes.
That was the family home. That's where when he came to live here, he lived there first. Yeah.
Yeah, and of course Ian Hanford, I remember he was instrumental in getting those blue plaques put around. So it's great to mark these things, and it just shows there's a lot in Torbay. You know, we love our Agatha Christie history, but there's a lot of other things as well that we can really focus on and use going forward. So a couple of points there. Thank you, Andrew. You know, this is quite scary when you think about the quantum technology and spooky action at a distance. Wow, that's something. And you've actually disproved Einstein, so that was pretty clever. But the whole thing now about with the use of media and how it's affecting our lives and security from cyber attack, and the thought we'll all need quantum computers. You know, we've just got used to this. But thank you, Andrew. And that does give me a really nice segue into our next guests. I think we ought to sort of just bring them to the fore, please. Can you? I'm going to bring in Karen, and also going to bring in Laura and Graham. I thought that would make you chuckle. So, cyber. This is interesting. Working for Barclays, and I would say other banks are available, and we're all in this together. Karen, you're a little bit deep and mysterious there.
Well,
because we know that ever since you've been part of the witness protection program, it's been a little bit difficult for you, hasn't it? But Karen Popham is our digital engagement manager for Barclays. Laura Carrier and Graham Mace are the cyber protect officers of Devon and Cornwall Police in the digital capabilities unit. Now, I don't know about you, but I've had umpteen emails telling me that my TV license direct debit has been cancelled and I need to do something about it. Well, the fact I don't pay it by direct debit is quite interesting as a clue, but my mother was scared to death about those kind of emails. And these things are happening all the time. So Karen, just briefly, as a bank, what can we do, and also how can we help our customers?
I think it's all down to education, isn't it? And apologies for the fuzzy filter. It isn't a filter. I just got a problem with the camera on my laptop, so apologies for that. But yeah, it is all down to education. The types of fraud that we see as a bank, they're not new. They've evolved somewhat, but you know, the types of fraud are overarchingly the same that we've seen over the last 10 to 15 years. But they're the scammers. They become a bit more entrepreneurial and a bit more brazen. So as you say, they're definitely imitating official or government bodies like the TV licensing, and particularly in the with all of the COVID support, then the programs from the government, various government agencies, they've definitely been trying to piggyback those as well. So lots of our customers receiving emails or contact purporting to be from a government agency when it's not, it's just a scammer. But it's just making sure that you've got the basics in place a lot of our customers, again, have perhaps at a bit of a knee-jerk have invoked working from home practices. So it may have introduced some vulnerabilities in your protocols for making payments, that side of things in your business. But it's, you know, just have the basics in place, no Spanish practices, and be truthful. If you've got 10 steps, follow those 10 steps. Don't skip any of them, because that's invariably where we find our clients catch perhaps a cold and then succumb to a scam and have a potential loss. So just follow all the steps that are there for your protection.
And I think that brings it home. If we have the next slide, please, Em. During the last 6 months, Barclays has had reported a 66% increase in the number of reports on scams. And so they've obviously been, the virus has not only been affecting humans, it's been affecting our minds. I mean, these things affect reputation of a business, it affects the systems, and it affects the bottom line. Because you look on the average cost of a breach, we're saying £35,000. Now that's a couple of years old, that stat. You can imagine where it's going now. 95% attributable to human error. And 44% of businesses surveyed have experienced an attack, and it's becoming more and more. And you think about that, you lose £35,000 in a business, it's very often at least one job, if not two. Cybercrime has cost 50,000 jobs, they estimate. Now, I thank you, Karen, you can stay with us, and I'm hoping there'll be some questions get asked on the line. Anybody that's watching, please do ask your questions, and we'll try to cover them off. But I'm going to bring in Laura and Graham now. So take it away, guys. You can tell us what your lot is.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for that, Steve. You were talking about your anniversary there. I'm just thinking it's my 10-year anniversary on Thursday this week. So I've been with Devon and Cornwall Police for not as long as you've been with Barclays, but I'm joined with my colleague Graham. So I look after Devon pretty much, and Graham's the Protect Officer for Cornwall, and he's come from the Detective Inspector from the City of London Police and joined us at the beginning of last year. So I'm grateful to have him on our team. Next slide, please, Emily. Yeah, so just a quick snapshot of what our unit actually does. We work in the Digital Capabilities Unit. It's a bit of a mouthful, so just we'll refer that to the Cybercrime Unit for Devon and Cornwall Police. So there's myself and Graham, we've got a team of detectives as well. But we all are part of this wider cyber policing network, which spans the length and breadth of the UK, known as Team Cyber UK. So all 43 police forces, yeah, we'll have some kind of cyber team. So for Devon and Cornwall, that's us. But we're all pretty much governed by the National Cyber Security Centre, which is GCHQ's arm of cyber. As you can see there, they're at the top of the tree. Next slide, please. Just quickly, we work to the 4P strategy, which is exactly the same as the counter-terrorism 4Ps, which cyber have just stolen. Myself and Graham, we work to protect, so we want to increase protection from cyber criminals, and we touch on prepare as well. The detectives that we work with, they come under the pursue strand, and there's a big emphasis now on the prevent side. So this is when we're looking at ways in which we can divert those who might be engaging into cybercrime onto better paths. So we've got prevent team as well. Next slide. This is what people think. The one before, the slide before is what people think we actually do. We sit in dark rooms, probably look like Karen. You can't actually see our faces. Everything's technical, lots of wires, screens, but in reality, sorry, Emily, next slide. What we actually do is very, very public. A lot of work we do is with victims, so it will never be publicised. But we are out and about in the community, speaking to businesses, organisations, charities, you name it. And what we do is tailor what we do to suit the audiences that we're speaking to. We change our presentations to suit the nature of the business. We do everything from workshops to attack simulation to whatever we can do to help a business understand how to protect themselves from cybercrime. Next one. That's just a snapshot of the different types of businesses and industries. Councils like to get a good mix of demographics, and there's nowhere in Devon and Cornwall that we won't travel to. I think it's important to get as big a reach as we can, because it's very apparent as we go through this presentation that knowledge of cybercrime is very lacking until the worst happens, and we want to stop that before unfortunately it actually does. Next slide.
Yeah, so what's the attraction for these criminals? It was really interesting what Karen just said a moment ago, that a lot of these sort of frauds, these scams, are not new. It's traditional crime that's actually been changed into the online environment. And the attraction for these criminals really is just that. The scale of how they can commit their criminality is far increased by the use of technology. When I was a detective, and it's taken me back with the music there from the bill, and you know, from my old days when I was walking the beat.
It's your ringtone, Graham.
Being a detective, I'd often turn up at a job like this that's on the screen there, an armed robbery at a post office or a jeweller's or a bank or something like that. And it's a very high risk crime for these criminals to commit, with a lot of times a very little or no reward at all. Look at the response as well the police put into these sorts of jobs. If this happened today in Devon somewhere, you've got the detectives turned up there, there's 4 of those, you've got the firearms guys, you've got PCSOs, you've got the people in the white suits coming in, the forensic teams, you've got major investigation teams back at the Nick looking into this. And Spotlight have just turned up. It's going to be on the news tonight.
It's already on Devon Live, Graham.
It's already all over the place. The footage is there, the CCTV images. The person committing this can only do one crime at a time, and they're going to get caught. And on this job, they only got away with just over £1,000. So if you go on to the next slide, please. So the attraction for these criminals really is to let's do this in a low risk environment and go online. Still going to steal things, we're still going to get money, but you don't have to be present at the scene. That's the big one. All I've got to do is buy myself a hooded top and a balaclava and sit behind my laptop. I can hide away anywhere else in the country, or I could go and be sitting in Russia or North Korea or Iran. And when we try and do inquiries with these sort of countries, you can ask our team, don't always get a lot of information coming back to us. So it's a low risk for these people to get caught. It's quite hard to get caught. They can do more than one offence at a time, and that's a big thing. You're not just committing one crime. Think about all those emails that come into your inbox, and we're just talking, Steve, there about the TV licensing one. How many millions of those have been sent around the UK? All that is one crime at one time that they're doing. And the rewards are absolutely huge. If you go on to the next slide, please. Unfortunately, it didn't make the Torbay Weekly, but it did make the Swindon Advertiser last year. 3 people were arrested for £22.1 million of cryptocurrency theft. And this shows you why criminals like cyber, because it didn't really make the big headlines. These were arrested in the southwest, these 3 people, along with their colleagues in Holland. So it shows you a big crime like that, you know, doesn't hit the press so much, whereas a small post office will be there. So it kind of goes under the radar, and we need more reporting, which we'll touch on as we sort of go through. You want to go on to the next slide?
Yeah, as you can see there with the stats, the threat is super real. Just quickly, the National Crime Agency estimate that the cost of cybercrime to the UK is in billions of pounds per year, and it's a growing figure. More relevant to businesses, the latest cyber breaches survey from the government identified that 68% of medium and 75% of large companies have identified cyber breaches or attacks within the last year. We know it's going to be a lot higher than that, but as Graham just touched on there, it's the reporting that we need. The monetary value, I mean, it cost the NHS £92 million when they were hit with the WannaCry strain of ransomware back in 2017. Graham, that was one that you'd personally dealt with, wasn't it, when you were in London?
It was, yeah. It actually cost me 4 days of no sleep, to be honest, when it happened from the Friday. I didn't do much else apart from deal with this. But you've got to remember, it wasn't an attack on the NHS. That was quite important. Just imagine what criminals would have done if they targeted the NHS. It was the fact that they got hit was it was old legacy systems that they were running. But you know, it's a whole manner of businesses get caught out now in cybercrime. The other figures on there, you got BA. I think they're still arguing it at the moment. Yeah. It's been going on and on. They were fined last year, the record fine. This is post GDPR. 183 million pounds have been fined, which is still, as I said, still arguing about. That was £500,000 of their customers' details that were harvested. But we always put the TalkTalk one as well, you know, just to give the other side of the coin. Pre-GDPR, this was a record fine of 400,000 for losing 95,000 of their customer details. You could sort of say they were lucky with that amount of money compared to Post, but actually are they? Because we're still sitting here talking about it. Think about the reputational damage that a cyber breach has to your company. When I've dealt with the bigger investigations when I was on the national teams, when I was dealing with the big businesses, it wasn't so much the money they're worried about, it's reputational damage, because that goes on for years, and that proves it with a talk one there. Bit of a scale of the crimes that are going on in our area in Devon and Cornwall. Bottom figure there, over 600 crimes we get a month related to cyber and fraud related sort of crimes in Devon and Cornwall. And we have to sort of try and deal with that. We do believe that 80% of cybercrime is preventable, which is why me and Laura love our job so much, and we try and do so much of it, because we can't physically investigate all those sort of crimes. So next slide, please. Yeah, and as it sort of says there, something that we have to sort of drum home quite a bit, even to our bosses as well. Cybercrime is really important. As it says there, it's a tier 1 threat to the UK. We classify it the same as terrorism, war, and natural disaster. So it's something that we all need to take seriously, and something that, you know, we need to sort of get more reports coming in so we can build this intelligence picture as well. So next slide, please.
Yeah, guys, we've all had to change our ways of working since lockdown. How have the cyber criminals changed theirs? You mentioned they put a hoodie on and go and sit in their back room and do it, but have you seen any new wave of threats since lockdown, or is it business as usual?
I would say it's probably business as usual, but as the slide said there, they're moving with the time, so they're changing the way they're doing these types of attacks. And I mean, phishing is a big one. We're forever seeing phishing emails, but 90% of sophisticated attacks start with a phishing email. And I think even more so prevalent just now, because we're all working at home, but you've got different distractions. You might have your kids run underneath your feet. You don't just have your IT company beside you that you can just pick up the phone and say, can you just come and check this? That, you know, you might be distracted in some way. So when that email comes in from the government to say, oh, you're due a tax refund because of COVID, you might just go and click on that, just think, oh, I'll just quickly do that. Or like you see the one below about another COVID one, but it's, you know, doing the necessary checks. Is that link pointing to what it actually states it is in the email? Do you agree, Jack?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the criminals have really just changed their hooks all the time. Things you should always look for as well, spelling and grammar. We always say that. We still see bad ones.
Yeah.
However, we see less and less of those now. They have got better at writing them and producing the graphics on them. Hover your cursor over who it's sent from as well. The COVID one there, the gov.uk one, that was one I received, and when I hovered over with my cursor who had sent that, it wasn't gov.uk. It was a person's name at hotmail.co.uk. So it's a good, easy way of just sort of checking it. And if we move on to the next slide, if we get any of these coming through, you know, we are aware of them and people get a bit blasé with them. But as Laura said, most sophisticated attacks start with them. We should be reporting them. And the National Cybersecurity Centre launched in April their new reporting portal. So if you can forward any of these phishing emails you get to report@phishing.gov.uk, the address on the screen there, they will look into it. So far since April, they've had over 1.7 million phishing emails reported to them through that, and that's resulted in taking down lots and lots of these fake websites and stopping some of these scams. So it is important you do it. They'll only send you an email to say they've acknowledged that you've sent it to them. They won't come back to you and give you the result, but it really, really is making a difference with the intel picture for the UK.
Are there any particular types of attacks at the moment which are, you know, particularly affecting businesses in Devon and Cornwall? And what should we do to protect against these threats having an impact on us?
If we move on to the next slide. At the moment, for us, ransomware we can't get away from, and you mentioned it, you might have heard it in the news, you might see the news headlines. Ransomware can hit, you know, multinational, international companies. As you can see there, it's been hit, universities have been hit recently, but what we're dealing with in Devon Cornwall is our local businesses who get hit by it. And as you can see there, you know, we've got Town Hall in Tiverton, it was hit. Bristol Airport's been hit. These are ones that have been publicised, but what we're dealing with are the ones that, you know, you might not hear about, but it is happening in our area. Do you want to go to the next slide?
That looks like Jim's dining room table, that did.
Yeah, I mean, just to sort of bring it home as well, I've been dealing a lot during lockdown. We have seen a resurgence in ransomware in Devon and Cornwall. So Laura's talking now about some of the big ones that get into the media and the press, but we're generally dealing with ones that we can't always talk about. I've got to sort of anonymise, unfortunately, as I sort of go through it, but I've been dealing with an attack that started in Cornwall a couple of months ago, infected one company, but unfortunately that company was linked to another 18 companies across Devon and Cornwall. So all 19 of them got hit by ransomware. Now, it's quite impactful. Every single one of these companies, we always say to people, make sure you've got a good backup, because that will protect you on ransomware. However, every one of those 19 companies had a backup. Now, some of those companies were able to restore within a couple of days, which is really good. It's got good backup procedures, good testing, and then they know how it all works. Some of the companies take a couple of weeks. Some of the companies still trying to recover now after several months. They're sitting there on the Monday morning when I phoned them, and the attack happened on Sunday, telling me that they've lost everything. They've lost 14 years worth of business. They're now having to work on paper. So just think about what your business continuity plans actually are, and how have you tested them, and when did you last test them?
Do you have a business continuity plan? Because sometimes we're faced with that question.
Exactly. And some of these companies were saying to me, like, we don't know, we've got a backup. But unfortunately, in this attack, all the backups were also encrypted because they were all connected online in a weak way. So when we talk about having backups, it's about having a backup plan. So it's having more than one backup and understanding how to restore from them, and understand and making sure that you put testing in place, because it can be really impactful, because we do see businesses unfortunately going out of business from it. So be very careful about it.
Just go on to the next one. Yeah, one I wanted to mention, business email compromise. I think Karen possibly touched on this earlier. Basically, where businesses will be sent an email and you'll be, you'll direct funds to a fraudulent bank account because you think you might be dealing with a supplier and paying a bill. Actually, you're dealing with a cyber criminal. I had 1 week in particular, and I think me and Graham called it Hell Week. We're seeing this every day, but 1 week in particular, we had 3 victims across Devon and Cornwall. Collectively could have lost £2.5 million. So a hell of a lot of money, enough to put businesses, out of business, but again, not featured in the headlines. I wanted to mention this one because when we dealt with the charity, it wasn't the monetary value that hit home to me, it was the human impacts. We're sitting in a boardroom with, directors, with people crying, telling us they had staff members off long-term sick with stress because they felt responsible for the loss that the charity had faced. The IT manager had resigned because they'd felt equally responsible as to what had happened. Those impacts are ongoing, and for us it was very, very devastating to see this. But this is what cyber criminals just care about, the money. But it really is to have those procedures in place where you are thoroughly checking and checking and checking. We had one this week. I think you spoke to the victim, did you, Graham?
Yeah, it was only this week, yesterday. The lady knows all about business email compromise, knows when the CEO sends an unexpected email through and asks for the payment to be diverted to a different bank account because the client's asking for it to be paid somewhere else. She knew all that, but she was at home. The kids were trying to get to school. One was crying. Dog was running around. It was breakfast. She was rushing around. She saw the email come through from supposedly the CEO, requesting a payment just under £6,000. So she just sent it. And she's come to me saying, I'm so sorry. I know I shouldn't have done this. I didn't follow the procedures, but everything was just on top of me at home. So it's just about working from home again. It's about sort of taking your time a little bit and look after your employees. Make sure you're still testing and educating them as well, to doing the right procedures.
Can I ask them? I mean, I'm sure you've been asked this a lot, but what practical advice can you give me to help me stay secure from home?
Okay, if you want to go to the next slide, please. Well, when we're in a business, when we're all working in our normal offices, we've got IT teams probably, or an IT department looking after us. The first thing I like to say to people about working from home is look at your home network, do a little bit of an audit. Go home today, or if you're at home already, which most of us are, look at what you've got connected to your network at home, to that box in the corner that flashes away called your router. Because you can see a whole host of things here on the screen, anything from your TV to your heating systems to Alexa in the corner to your doorbell, your watches, even your washing machine. You can't seem to buy one of those now without it connecting to the internet. Think about how they connect and what security they have. Can you change the passwords on them? Because most of these will come with a default password. There's a lot of work being done by government to bring in legislation to make companies now provide more security on these Internet of Things, we call it, or these different devices that sort of connect, but it isn't there yet. But once you know what's on your network, think about how it connects through that flashy box, that router, because the one thing you can do is secure the door to your house. What I mean by that is secure that router. On your door, you lock it every day when you go out, when you're at home. Do the same with your router. Go into the systems administration page. If you don't know how to do that, look at how to do it. It's quite simple to do. Lots of advice on Google. You know, BT, Virgin, Sky, TalkTalk, they all give very simple advice how to do this. Go on there, go into the settings and change your password. Change it from that admin password, because those admin passwords for your routers, if you're a criminal, are searchable online. Because unless you've changed them, they're out there to find. And it's quite easy to scan a road and find out what routers are available down there. Do a brute force attack by breaking the password and to get onto your network that way, if you want to. Enable two-factor authentication if you can as well, wherever possible. If you want to go on to your next slide, please. Next surroundings. Talking about my next slide. Be aware of what's around you as well when you're working from home. Today you can see I've got nothing behind me. Don't be like the chap there on the screen with your password popping up.
Especially if you're going to be on TV.
And especially when you're a police officer, if any of them are listening out there, because I certainly see it when I'm doing team meetings with people. So we're not immune. And I had to stick on the Plymouth Live one there as a member of the public. Took a picture of the passport office in Plymouth, one of the windows, and somebody had wrote down one of their passwords on a flip chart and left it leaning up against the window. Several things, don't do that. Don't show it, but don't have a password that's password one either, because that's a whole new presentation we're not going to get into today. But that's ridiculous. If you want to move on to the next slide.
I'm just kind of conscious of time, but yeah, just it's always the basics. I think we're doing more and more of these video conferencing meetings, password protect your meetings, have a waiting room, so you're only letting those in that should be authorized to attend your meetings. If I'd known I was going to be in the office, I probably would have chosen a better one than this, because it's quite a boring background, but you can't see anything behind it. So use a background to prevent anybody from seeing what's around your house, or things that don't need to be seen, and prevent screen sharing as well, so not anyone can just jump on and hijack your session and potentially show things that the audience don't need to be seeing.
Yeah. Well, one other question. I had an email from EasyJet informing me that my data had been involved in a breach.
Yeah.
Should I care? And what should I do about it?
Yeah, you should definitely care. If you want to move on to the next slide, we'll just sort of finish up with this really. We see lots of data breaches. I think people have got blasé over time. I know when I was back as a detective, I dealt with the Equifax one, was another one that I dealt with. We see them every week. People think, well, nothing's happened, my data's gone. I'm not really that sort of bothered, but we do need to get some protection in there. There's lots of things that criminals will do. Sometimes the data doesn't get put onto the dark web for sale or put on a forum for free. It can be years or a year or two down the sort of line. But I think Laura's got a good example of something that has happened. If you want to move on to the next slide.
Yeah, this has happened to me, but has happened to quite a lot of people that have contacted us because they have received the same email and have paid. So basically what the criminals are doing, they're scraping the dark web for your data, and then they're constructing an email to say, I've just been watching you watch porn and I've made a video of this, and if you don't want me to share this with your friends and family and contacts, you just have to pay me $737. Thanks for that, Kevin. What makes these emails more scary, more believable, is what you can't see there. It's got my email address, but it did have an old password of mine attached to it. Now the information that Kevin has got has been taken from some kind of data breach. So all this information that's out there on dark web forums, this is how these criminals can potentially make quite a lot of money. If we go on to the next slide quickly, I think we're nearly at the end anyway. Yep, and again, if you haven't used this site before, do it. Have I been pwned? We'll share the address. I think it's www.haveibeenpwned.com. Pop your email address into it and it will tell you if it's been involved in a data breach, any known data breaches, and do it for your work accounts as well, because these cyber criminals will try anything. As you can see there, my personal account, my old personal account was breached. What you can't see, or you might not be able to read it, but one of the collections, we've got up to about collection 5 now. Collection 1 was a data dump of 773 million unique email addresses and passwords. So all it takes is somebody like Kevin to send out 773, they're called phishing extortion emails, asking for $700. He's going to be a very rich person. So this is how cyber criminals, alluding back to what Graham was saying, you know, it's an easy crime to commit, because sometimes in a case like this, you know, people do watch porn and might be worried that they have been filmed, because we're all using webcams at the moment. It's quite a nasty one, but yeah, we've certainly seen a rise in this in the past few months. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you find yourself on there, you find yourself being on a data breach, two really important things to do. Change your password straight away, because you shouldn't be sharing the same password over multiple sites, and enable two-factor authentication. If you've had financial details taken as well, you might want to look at sort of credit reference agency, see if anybody's using any of your data there for opening any accounts or anything like that. But it is important to sort of, you know, take these things seriously as they sort of come along. As Laura said, collection 1, 773 million. I've got up to collection 5. They used to cost $39 to buy those 5 collections, which is terabytes of data. They're now free to download. So it's not hard to commit this sort of crime. So we just go on to the final one. Want to move on. Just to sort of finish up, really, this is an old quote from Interpol. I won't read it word for word, but basically what it says there is at the bottom, it's everybody's responsibility, cybercrime. It's really about sharing. It's all of us coming together to try and protect the UK and protect everybody from these sort of criminals. If there's anything you've heard today that you like, please share it with people. That's what we want people to do, or get us to come along and talk to you. We can discuss anything that you want to. Just go on to the last slide. And it's sort of, that's it from us today. You know, we are here. We don't mind whether we come and talk to, you know, whether it's one person, 2 or 3 people in a business, or you might have thousands of employees. We can come and talk to you, give out any presentations, but it is about training. It's about education.
And don't be worried to ask, because we've got a few people saying we really don't understand this technical jargon and anything cyber, and that's when people tend to shy away from it. We're kind of here to hold your hand as well, so don't be, there's, you know, contact us if you need any information. Anything we do with regard to staff training, things like that, is all completely free as well, and impartial, because obviously we work for the police. We're here if you need us. Thanks for having us.
Excellent. Well, that's really good. Jim, yes.
Just one thing I do get from Laura and Graham, that cybercrime, it doesn't necessarily make sexy headlines, but I'm more than willing to carry an advice column from you in the weekly and weeklies across Devon. We could discuss that later on. I'm only too willing to carry an advice column from you.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, cool. Great.
Brilliant. Thank you.
That's great, Jim, because it's good that we can work together. We have these, and then we can feed through to the printed press and also the online Torbay Weekly as well. It will get good coverage. Got a couple of questions. One from Tony Medwar. Can you explain again how you can tell what's accessing your system? I think you were hovering over emails, weren't you?
Oh, the email ones. Yeah, if that's the phishing sort of side of it, you can see who sent it just by hovering over the using your cursor, hover over the address bar to actually who sent it. If it's about who's accessing your system, you need to sort of not quite sure how that question's coming across, but you want to make sure you've got antivirus you're running on your system. And when I say that, make sure it's up to date as well. We often go out to victims when they say they've got antivirus, we've gone along and they've not been paying the subscription, it actually hasn't been updating or doing any scans for them. If you want about what's on your system, it's a good way to do an audit of what's connected to your router. Go around your house first of all and have a think about what have you actually got, write it down, but also go onto your router. If you go onto that systems administration page, if you do it on a BT Home Hub, you've got the slidey bit on the back. If you've got BT, it's the only one I know off the top of my head. If you pull that off, you turn it over, there's a 4-digit number on there, an IP address, starts 192 dot, and then some of the numbers. If you put that into your browser, it will take you directly to the systems administration page for your router, and you can change your setting. You can also look at what's connected to your device. It's got all your routers have got a built-in firewall, so you can see what ports you've got connected or open, and anybody you might be connecting or trying to connect.
Yeah, and from
Yeah.
that, I think as a business as well, it's always good practice to have a look to see who can access your systems, because you might have ex-employees who still might be able to log in from home and access company information because you haven't disabled their access. So that's always good housekeeping to disable any access to anybody that shouldn't be accessing your systems. It could be contractors that have come in to work for a month or so. As soon as they don't need to be on that system, disable it.
And when you're offboarding employees as well, make sure that their usernames and passwords are taken off the system. We have had a case, well, Laura's had a case just recently where it was somebody from 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Their password was still left on there, and they've had quite a bad attack through somebody breaching that password of Batman 1.
Yeah. Well, also, Tony Coombs has asked, can we have the details of have I been porn site? That sort of, some people might be a bit embarrassed or whatever, but it is genuinely, you just don't know what's going on, who's accessing your systems, what's going on behind that camera. I really do thank you for your input. So if we could maybe, I don't know if you've got the details of that one just quickly, or whether we provide that afterwards.
It's www.havei. It's a slide before. I don't think it's got the web address on it.
Just get it quickly.
Haveibeenpwned.com. So pwned as in PWNED.
Yeah. And I think
and law enforcement do recommend it, so it is a safe site to use.
Yeah. There's a couple of comments come in now. One is that thanking you for what has been really interesting and informative. That's come from Ronnie Holden, who is from Big Wave Marketing, one of our sponsors of the month, which is fantastic. Thank you, Ronnie, for that. So thank you, guys. It is a lot of information. We did say today would be a bumper event, and we're going to run on till 1:45 today. We've got the extra 15 minutes because there's so much content. I'm going to bring back Karen. Actually, Angela George has commented, Karen looks like a cyber hacker because of the way she's there in the dark. So I did say at the beginning, Karen,
never trust when you're dealing with someone
thoughts?
Virtually. Well, just that actually, are you dealing with who you think you are? And I guess it does come full circle to that social engineering. So very much so when we're not necessarily sitting opposite someone in the boardroom looking at the whites of their eyes. If you've got a new supplier, new customer that you introduce into your supply chain, do your due diligence and make sure that they are who they say they are, because people very often think it will just be that one-off email. That's not necessarily the case. It is a catalogue of rapport that they'll build with you to build credibility before they go in for that, that big attack, particularly with businesses. So, it might be a nondescript email that you'll have first of all, but then they'll build upon that profile so that you build a level of trust and think that you're dealing with someone genuine. And that then tends to be when you'll perhaps action whatever email they might send to you. But don't trust necessarily. Be very suspicious. It sounds awful, but you need to have a level of suspicion around you about who you're dealing with.
And certainly at Barclays, we've had instances of people being socially engineered. You get a valid contract that is hundreds of thousands of pounds, and then the person you strike up the relationship with about the supply chain, and then at the last minute they say, oh, don't put it into that bank account because we've got a problem with it. Can you put it into this one instead? And you say, okay, and off goes £250,000, 580,000 for one charity in Cornwall.
Yeah, I know. I think it's really important what you're both sort of saying there. We see these every single week. It's not just the technical. They will start with the physical side as well. The phone calls, we're seeing more and more of it starting with phone calls and then moving through to the emails, and social engineering is a big area.
And you don't want to just gift cyber criminals the information. And one thing we do say to companies, because we see it all the time, the information that you list about all your individual employees, I don't need to know that the chief executive dog is called Fido, because I'm thinking now, oh, is that going to be his password? It's just this collection of snippets of data that you can find out about people on social networks, but company websites, please don't publicize information that could get your employees into trouble being socially engineered.
Yeah, and remember the action fraud. Action fraud is where you report it, actionfraud.police.uk, and as much as can be reported as possible, because we can shut down as many avenues as possible. So I'm going to bring it towards the close now, because we've got a good number of people on the line, and thank you all for staying with us, and thank you so much to our presenters today. A load of information, and as I said at the beginning, these episodes are recorded and available for playback. Please do look at our website, torbaybusinessforum.com, and if you go into the events breakfast bite sessions, you can see the playbacks, because Mike from IMS Marketing has got them on there through our YouTube channel, and as I've always said at the beginning, you know, anything we've said today has been taken down and will be used in evidence against us. So it's been really good. Thank you to Andrew for talking to us about photonics and the Bayes communications heritage. To Karen for lurking in the shadows there, ready to help protect our customers. And thank you, from Barclays, your busy schedule. Thank you for getting to as many customers as we can. We're running free webinars. How often do those happen, Karen?
They are daily. So we run a cyber fraud awareness webinar that is free. You don't even have to be a Barclays customer. So there's loads of useful information. A lot of it overlaps what Graham and Laura have talked about there, but we talk about case studies that we see as well, and some extra helpful hints and tips as well that that people can use personally as well as in their working lives. But they're daily, so absolutely we can share the details of how to register for one of those. And there are various times throughout the day as well to try and accommodate people's schedules.
Okay, and how can you find details of those? Is it on our website?
You are welcome to share my details, and I can book people on if there is anyone that's interested. So if Emily is happy to do that, I could share my details if the slides are being shared post call, and my details can be shared.
And they are free and available to all, and it's just something that we're all in this together. As I said at the beginning, other banks are available, but today it's Barclays sponsoring this, so thank you very much for that. Thank you to Laura and Graham. Been really helpful, lots of slides to get through, but thank you very much, and thank you for the work that you're doing. Thank you to our host, Wayne Losky from Epic. It's been great working here today. I think I've gotten quite accustomed to this office. I might come back if I'm allowed. Thank you to Jim in the newsroom, and I know it's deadline day, Jim, so you'll be off in a moment, won't you?
Yes.
Looking forward to this week's edition. I think it comes out Thursday, is it?
Yeah.
On Thursday. Emily, thank you. You've been a star as always, keeping us all in order, getting the I always call it the Muppet Show. It's a bit like Blankety Blank or the Muppets, whatever it is. It always looks good. So thanks, Em. Did you want to say anything just before we finish?
Yeah, if you don't mind, Steve, it was just really just to remind everyone more about bringing business back, the incentives and the opportunities there are for businesses through Kickstart and the trainee and apprenticeship initiatives. And in particular, the Kickstart scheme, which is the scheme that is offering employment to individuals 16 to 24, 6-month work placements, those that are on universal credit and probably harder reach to find employment. If anyone's interested in knowing more about this scheme, because we are getting lots and lots of questions now, we are facilitating questions through the TDA. So if you're a business wanting to register interest in offering placements, please could you email inquiries@tda.uk.net. And any businesses that are interested in knowing more about the scheme, please could you email employers@southdevon.ac.uk. So I can't emphasize enough, there's so many opportunities out there for businesses. All of these initiatives obviously come with funding. So please get in touch and let us know if you want more information. Thank you.
Brilliant.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Em. And again, thank you to our sponsors this month, Big Wave Marketing and Barclays. Thank you all for joining us today. It's been good to have you on the lines. Anybody that watching us on catch up, please don't vote now. But I will close it. And I think a track from 1979, 41 years ago when I joined Barclays, this was in the charts at that point. And this is a message to our criminals.
I can't hear it that well, Steve.
We will win. See you next time, everybody in Torbay. Next week,
Bye, everyone.
Users and Chambers
Bye.
Network.
Bye.
We'll all be together again. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Bye.